feel so happy to get to introduce Prageeta Sharma. Her collection of poetry include Bliss to Fill, The Opening Question, which won the Fen's Modern Poets Prize, Infamous Landscapes, Under Gloom, and Grief Sequence. Her honors and awards also include a Howard Foundation Award. She is the Henry G. Lee Professor of English at Pomona College, as well as the founder and president of the conference Thinking Its Presence, Race, Creative Writing, and Literary Studies. So I ordered Prageeta's books from Wave Books 4 months ago, and I still haven't got the package. So that tells you how difficult it is to get poetry overseas. And after 600 emails with the Wave Book staff, I thought those books have been lost. But those are the lostness, but not loss. I think I have the dreaming towards it and have the anticipation of her language. So you can't know how much I look forward to listening to her read in this space with us. So welcome, Prageeta Sharma.
Funny, I can't see far, but my glasses are kind of useless when I'm trying to read. I'm grateful to read with Cyril today, and I'm also just so grateful and thankful for Collier and Dorothy, who has put this amazing conference together, and the poets. I feel so stimulated, excited, and I really welcome you to come to Claremont. I have a guest room, and I'd love to continue with these conversations. The work I've been listening to has been so brilliant. So, and the students and this community is really extraordinarily special. So thank you. I'm going to read a poem from Undergloom that Dorothy has been so kind to give a close reading of. And I have a feeling many people might relate to this feeling. This poem is called Grateful, and I have the definition, the dictionary definition right underneath, having the desire or reason to thank somebody. Your poetry about outsiderness too outside the outlining norms. It made you look ungrateful. Erosion of integrated feelings, a breakdown of the soft side, like bad cheap bread. You could tell people thought they ordered a baguette, but they got you, bad cheap bread, dressed with bad dressings, trying to taste good. Of the towardness you yearn for as though it were inclusion, towardness replaced with something, not a collective revolutionary subjective empathy, no descriptive abject space to share with others, the way you did in your urban environment, the way you used to follow and share abject feelings with others, with a kind of careful and mindful allegiance, if this is even possible. And now you become the descriptive abject space, and you're horrified. On top of that, you find that everyone claims to be a Marxist when they're really staunch constellations of teetering materialists. So when you are a glaring materialist with inner Marxist tendencies, you may appear tacky. But you are the outward of everyone's inward. It's all the same. There are attempts to stick you with the bill, to pat you with the so-so brush off. Or you think everyone is a modernist, flashing the collective rejection of individual heroes, or limiting the play between subject and object to offerings of a specific alien play, tending to the tiny residual personal fires or shocks to the system. However, you're no fool. You realized all this very young. What t-shirt must you wear to convince them of this? A recess for adults leads to more shameless bullying. An articulation of disclusion. The patent expires on your wares. You're interested in a new contemporary musical scene. That was my poem about academia and my first job as a director of a creative writing program. Not my first, but my first tenure position. So I'm going to read one love poem from Grief Sequence. This is a love poem to my second late husband. So I'm that person. He died of bile duct cancer in November 18th. And this strangely, it's a strange poem for what it says, but it's a love poem. Abide. You have gone to get a haircut in Kirkland, but before you left, you rubbed my arms to warm them out of the blankets with a dearness that I thought I would never find. When you grow older and I fret that you too will die, you will tell me that I conflate the stars with tombs. I sang you Earth, Wind, and Fire's reasons, and we folded into the Delphonics, didn't I blow your mind this time? And I said, you don't even know you did. You were too modest to even think you could. And you know somewhere hidden, we live now to solve our soft heart's problems, which come from the fallen places, where they are the raconteurs who died on us. They took up the largesse of the art of death. But we don't care who had the better lover, the better spouse, the kinder or more considerate one. Now, we can just take this morning and stretch out a line of aporia, an aphoristic single-sided horizon of trees, buildings, and sky. So I'm going to just read some new poems. These poems kind of straddle several areas. The title of my book is, now I'm going to get used to this, okay, is One Mint One, and it's dedicated to Mike, my late husband, Michael Stussy, who died in November, and my mother, who also died last year, Bimla Sharma. It actually comes from, so One Mint One actually comes from the word one mint I found. Actually, I'm going to move to my notes if I can. I had found in Barnett Newman's catalog this passage from Goethe, from Faust, by Goethe. And it's the only place where I find in this translation by McNeice the word one mint. It's not in any other translations, but I was really interested in the use of that. And so I just kind of put it in the notes for my poetry book to think about where we can locate one mint. I also went to Newman's, okay, now I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, which is right here, I think. Yep. Okay. So then I went to Newman's archive, and I found his dictionary, and it's where I can locate the word one mint, but it's no longer in the dictionary. So it's in his it's in a 1948 dictionary in his archives. So I do like thinking about one mint as a notion of harmony. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then this is the painting that I was first inspired by, and I found that every time I located a one mint piece, this was one mint number one. I'm sorry. I found them like a beacon to heal. Every time I found one of these, I found myself just rejuvenated. And while I was grieving my first husband and falling in love with Mike, he and I would happen upon these in museums, and they connected us. But I also wanted to think about one mint as it relates to Hinduism and my turn away from Hinduism. I started to find that at the hierarchy in Hinduism, the notions of an afterlife and harmony were things I was less interested in. I also, there's like obviously a political component to that too that I'll talk about. But I think, and then also with, with it, I also wanted to think about what I was turning away from. So I love this line from Faust: I must translate it differently if I am truly illumined by the Spirit. And then Upanishad, Isa Upanishad. One is the outcome of the transcendent, and the other is the outcome of the immanent. So I think the immanent is where I'm living in this manuscript. Okay, I have like 14. I'm going to start with a 1-1. In it, I found that the political discourse would love its ethical moon, a wonderment, a one sum, bewitching affinities built upon antinomies, abstract and expression, a wool cap of ornament for the sake of weather. Loving him helplessly anew helped, loving her helplessly anew helped, leaving it all behind helplessly helped. Building around the moribund became a kind of blessing. I left constituents around the number 1, and I won, and I felt simple and glad, and finally incandescent, and comfortably large in my honesty. A kind of hanging of the rituals, the clothes, the sense of living in them upright. I felt trouble pinging from my thumb muscles, but ignored the throb. I looked out and out into a dense and driven fog and said goodbye to its flavor. Goodbye to more than 10 years of saying, will you please love me? I wanted to birth a kind of abstract expressionism of the merely objective and the racialized lover of things. One-mint or ornament, or I won an ornament, or I loved an ornament, and the one-mint of myself resolved. I resolved, and thus I became into myself a one that I thought would never be allowed. I moved outside of the fog into a place that signified art. Sorry, I just found my little pile. This is a very long poem. This is like the longest poem I'm going to read, I think. And I was thinking about New Age language and being raised on the Beatles and being raised in the US, being born in Framingham, Massachusetts, and what it meant to me to build an identity around New Age rhetoric teased out of Hinduism or built off of it. And was that my identity? You know, was just thinking about a fragmented or diluted idea of Hinduism. Or you'll see. And also I thought about widowhood, like famous widows or widowers. A moment has 2 equal parts and many decades. Cartesian voiceovers may draw you in by your desire for authenticity, but there are people who want to buy you a soul in how they narrate a life, pencil in hand. I say, they don't care about you. I thought they did. I thought they might. Oh, shoot. Oh, wait. Oh, no. It's fine. Sorry. They read Ram Dass. Sorry, that was not in there. They read Ram Dass and reconsidered politics, but grew too tired of how one must try to be in this world. Failed to consider. I'm going to start over. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I suddenly thought I had the wrong page. Thank you. I hardly read this poem. A moment has 2 equal parts in many decades. Cartesian voiceovers may draw you in by your desire for authenticity, but there are people who want to buy you a soul and how they narrate a life, pencil in hand. I say they don't care about you. I thought they did. I thought they might. They read Ram Dass and reconsidered politics, but grew too tired of how one must try to be in this world, and failed to consider the drawn-in hierarchies. To heal, I found cultural influences to be symbols, and myself in between in my head of longing to identify. Let it be, says Lennon and McCartney. McCartney, a widower, Lennon, widowed, a genius, an intelligent and scrappy Japanese-American woman. Along with this, Olivia Harrison, widowed by her sadhu-loving husband. Along with Barnett Newman's zip across my face, dividing my sense of division of what inhabits my world. The pain of strong men making art. Their pain clutched in their grips and in their sides, and how they hurled me into their hell. But I loved their minds. I found both abstraction and pain in art, in the Beatles, and in the museum. I waited so eagerly for the line's other shoe to drop, but I have to wake up and live. I must take distance from everyone else's paintings, from their lives and lies, and see a moment clearly as a memory having two equal parts. I can't be anyone but myself, nor can I hold my arms still the way some can in action. I hope to see luck in the moment it appears, as it might shine in the line, a zip down the middle of a canvas, or as an intermediary posing gladly in a piercing photograph that others might first see as dull. Lenin found love in a gallery. I must find love in a gallery, over and over and over. I don't know if the Beatles actively cited the Upanishads, but were inspired by the Bhagavad Gita, and Gita means song, and my name means preface to a song. Which song? Is it a spiritual song? Did I lose it along the way? Did I find I needed a spiritual center from the populist world, the one that remade my culture, the one that made me rename myself as an adolescent to approximate my name? When I was a teenager, I wanted people to call me Angel or Anjali, so I had an Indian-sounding name that could be converted to a sultry American name. It was my first poem, my first lyric. This helped me disassociate from the name-calling and bullying in middle and high school because they had turned my name into a slur and taunted me with it. I had to reimagine another name that went with my heavy metal eyeliner. My love for Aerosmith, which then turned to Ono's Yes, I'm Your Angel, living in both of those song feelings when the moment came to utter a legible name. I realize I don't want to live with anyone's dry-off tone, a slow-moving hostility, undetectable at first but then shapes to a simper, absent of remorse, sadness, or property, discounting how these conditions might teach when punctuated in volvels. And now, as an adult, when my fellow friends lose solidarity with one another, and then they commit lateral violence, especially when they can't name what they do with power. This is what's happening to our unity as a global people. The fallen sun, the rising moon and its disks and measurement, this medieval purpose of finding daylight burning is to locate a concrete metaphor amidst snow-covered vowels that patchwork a social life here. I'm not calling out solely in a lyric utterance, because how when narrated with small and smaller talk, it's almost extinguishing, damaging the selves underneath, the striking timidity of a companion ungrasping hands. To let the air cool and let sweat dissolve. I saw you all at the important table and surmised that I did know all of you in singularity or with trust. I take this memory of you to the other self, here, to this new collaborative, to a new idea of one-ment. I recommend finding reality honest and the sewing materials rip open to a flighted fault line of straight, upright branches, how you drive away from them to the state line. This is the old life sewn into the new one, and it doesn't have to be excitable all the time. I recommend looking into the expressive expression of your blushing brown cheek in the window's reflection to find the innermost feeling with its veiled circuitry, because now you are becoming content with contentedness in what is mine or yours to win, because winning is how one stays one, as it feels in its innermost present tense and matches a bronze tree outside your new house and its silver windows. How foisted and difficult the cabaret of showmanship is to watch, leather-tight clothes around the girth, performing a lighted clarification that hurts in retrospect, but its honesty is beguiling, and it touched you, me, in this moment. I've brought my heart-lit candles with their figurative cascades, and I give it to whom? My neighbor? or to this overt, generous darling quipped in his comely, quiet dance, the one we don't do in public. Because a nightly living room for a nightly night of proportions will fulfill me more of my fantasy than dining with the scholar's mouth. Or how the address and the idea of numeracy in life and repetition becomes memorable and not numerous because you understand death now and for the rest of your life, and you will always find death in plain terms in your head space. But what I collect for my oldest Hindu self is one held out in ancestry and for lineage and for prosperity, like 3 cultural questions singe a need or purpose. So with blushing, I am letting my arms lower in obedience. I have obedience to my parents, and I hunger this. I have hunger for the eternal partner, and you are here. I hunger this more than poetry. This is the cultural expression I won't let up. But I am in admiration of what being numerous means in modernism and its ethos. I am still wanting an occult that can be measured with atheist overtures, particularly when I feel moved by you. This is also coupled with a yearning to exit into and out of the communal through numbering the stairwells with the small hand I've been given that has grown significant but burned out, tired out by the triggers that bore pupils above pupils. I wanted to eat my own populism and cry, "Forgive me." I handed you a jackfruit that we all found teeming and built. I have thought this to be part of Atman, the spiritual subjectivity of the soul, but in use in other words, as I have found there are multiple speakers inside of connoisseurship, a fortune without karma to defining narrative truths, and yet with karma's light, a touch, a nod, a feeling that avows something, a chin peak to say yes and of course. Let all the lines be as they must, both ornamental and necessary, and leaven our hearts to be both representational and non-representational. That one, I was just trying to think about, actually to work against ideas of the universal in scriptures and build a poem that tried to repurpose that language. I'm just going to read. Wait here, let me check on. Oh, I don't have that much time. I just read a long poem. I'm gonna just. This one is like my bad behaving poem about my old life, my old family. How a tale lost its ending. Sometimes I blame the years that came before and the girth of giving everyone everything. I gave nothing to myself except food, wine, sugar, and hunger. I was keen to be loved by a family who wasn't really mine. In the end, I realize. My parents loved worrying about my weight, and so they didn't feel like the family I chose. My husband and his child pretended I wasn't bigger each year, surrounding me for 15 years as I grew fat in their care. But then I learned after he died how little in common we all had except for food and the extravagance of a fevered materialism, of drinking nights away. What could shape the heft of a dinner table, isolating its troubles? My weight hid all their vices and secrets. I was an overweighted fairy tale. I didn't know what was tied to my neck. Was I full of myself? Yes, now I'm full of only myself. It wasn't their fault or mine necessarily, and maybe it was me who envied them. Their weight, looks, and secrecies, untouched pathologies, however, welted into our daily life, and I became their central psychological problem because everything stayed in a befuddling superficiality to me, of magical thinking where nothing burst of consequence unless in a private abuse. No discarding that calculated vanity because a privilege is a decidedly discovered specious affair for some. But oh, they loved my Ganesh and Krishna, all the Gopal babies. Oh, they loved my Hinduism for what it gave them, launching a misdirected spiciness. I was able to mount their greed with judicious garlands, and maybe my blue roundedness held their sanctity entwined until a burst. I burst with anger. I myself was I myself was my culture, and for them used for their yogic poses. And when they wore Indian textiles around their middles and draped a mantra with a vowel around their tongues for fitness, how much mimicry built a thrusting shell. And when I succumbed to their values, I felt like a thin, cheap version of myself, spreading butter on top of a fake family until they felt suffocated by my headlong will. And they robbed my big Buddha belly of what I hoped were my good deeds. I'm going to just end with one poem. This is another poem that circulated in that packet, and it has a line from a 20th century activist, Bipin Chandra Pal. The self in Hindu thought, even in the individual, is a synonym for the universal. So this can return to a conversation. What is sovereignty for the Hindu? What is universal but a hierarchy in that it still develops too much consensus around its power? What is the reprise of colonial Hinduism with so much of the self? How do we take up space and place? Where is the self here in Southern California, where we've erased the communities with our settler universal selves? Is it the universal that keeps people out? What is the self in Hindu thought? Who is myself in Hindu thought? And what is mystic about this? What is the reprise of the individual who is a synonym of the self? Maybe the power of Shakti can be the new synonym with its sense of to be able. But is the problem of being able also caste privilege, a caste privilege mentality? And this is still reigning in the institution of the self. Why then do we build such assemblage around it as ritual? Thank you.